The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those listening in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one of you. Hope everybody is doing good and staying safe from COVID. I know tonight we're supposed to be getting a couple inches of snow and then freezing rain on top of that tomorrow, turning back over to snow. So who knows what we'll get, a big slushy bag of goo, you might say. With that though, tonight we're going to have a great show, and we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello everyone.
And we got Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And we got a great guest lined up tonight, and we're going to have Jeffrey introduce her.
Yes, well, our guest tonight is psychic medium Devin Evans. She's a compassionate leader with a passion for soul, mission, ownership, and personal growth. Devin works with the transformative power of connection, challenge, and support to propel our experience of claiming the lives we really want, with 20 years of corporate experience and 15 years of holistic energy work experience. Devin offers intuitive insight to practical support towards clarity and growth, embracing leadership and spirituality. Spiritually has connected her with her own authentic truth. Through such work, she is passionate about offering connection and inspiration to others, so promoting progress towards goals and dreams and preventing being overwhelmed. So welcome, Devin Evans.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited.
Well, we're glad to have you. And I know you live in Columbus, so it's not too far from me. And I met you at Post Town at a little convention that they had last fall.
Yeah.
And I know you sent some stuff to me to be able to talk about. And I wanted to know, I guess right from the start, at what age did you start seeing ghosts?
Well, the age that I started seeing ghosts is a little bit different than the age that I was aware that I was seeing ghosts. So I've always seen ghosts. And I think what tripped me up in my experience is that when I would hear others talk about seeing ghosts in their experiences, I always assumed that what they're seeing is with their physical eyes. And so you hear someone say, "Oh, I saw that ghost as plain as day as I see you." And that's not necessarily my experience. So growing up, I would imagine all of these scenarios and these people walking into my space, and I would just assume that it's my imagination. And for years, I went down this road where I would have these experiences, and I just assumed that I was imagining it. And so what happened was I developed my psychic abilities as like a very passive, in the background thing, kind of always running. And I was missing a lot of information that was being presented to me. And so actually wasn't until I had met my my mentor, Scotty Rourke, that I was able to give more credence and more acceptance and acknowledge to my gifts and really fully step into that and understand exactly what I was receiving and how I was perceiving it. So often when I was a little kid, I would hear snippets of conversation, again, just thinking it was my overactive imagination. I would have very vivid visions with my mind's eye about scenarios, vignettes, little movie, it looked like little pieces of movie. And for, I don't know, years, I went through life thinking that I was just supposed to be this amazing creative writer because I had all these like little nuances and stories and little bits and pieces of information told to me that I thought would make great stories. But I could never really get beyond this little piece that I was shown. I couldn't understand where the beginning was or where the ending is. And so what was really happening was these were the messages that ghosts were coming up and telling me. And I just didn't have that awareness. And so what I'm very passionate about today is teaching others, because I do think everyone has a certain degree of gifts. It's a spectrum. And anyone who's experiencing or having similar experiences that don't really understand or know what they're going through, I'm very passionate about giving them like a safe harbor to talk about this and to learn and grow into it so that they just have that awareness and be able to manage it.
So, was this taking place in your home?
It was. So often what would happen is I would be going down for bed, and then, in the dark, I would have actually spirits come to me. Sometimes they would come up to my bedside. Sometimes they would show me a piece of their life. Um, and I had my experience as a child actually went beyond just ghosts. I like to use the distinction of ghosts for earthbound spirits or people who have passed on but have decided to stay earthbound without crossing over to the other side. And then I like to use the term spirits for those that have passed on but crossed over to the other side. And I think there's a very big distinction there because it's a completely different energy. And so my experiences weren't just with ghosts, but also spirits. I was seeing past ancestors. I was seeing ancestors of neighbors. I was seeing my spirit guides, even though at the time I didn't realize they were my spirit guides. And again, so they would just come and they would talk to me. They would give me messages, and I just thought it was my overactive imagination. One of the more vivid ghosts that had come in the middle of the night, I was awoken around maybe 3:30, 4 a.m. And there was this very, ghosts can present themselves in any image that they choose. And sometimes, depending on the personality or the temperament of the ghost, they may try to intimidate you. And I think anyone in the paranormal community, they've come to understand this. This woman was actually presenting herself much taller than she really was, obviously. Like, she was 7 or 9 foot tall. She was very threatened because somewhere in that transaction in my dream or my subconscious state, I was shining a beacon and she was feeling threatened by that. So she had actually come to me, much larger in appearance and very angry. She was from like 1859. She actually is from England, London. Her name was Agatha. And she had rushed me in my bed and yelling at me that she, didn't want me nosing around. She didn't like my presence. She didn't want me there. And when a ghost approaches me like that, I usually put up a very quick boundary. I don't have a lot of tolerance for drama when it comes to ghosts. When I'm interacting with a ghost, my whole purpose is to give them a way to be heard. Because I feel like, free will is a huge deal in the universe, and everyone has the free will to either stay or to go. And some of the ghosts that approach me don't know that they have the opportunity to cross over without judgment or fear. And so sometimes if you just kind of put up that boundary and get them to what I like to call, present themselves respectfully, they'll change their demeanor, and then they're ready to have a conversation. And it's almost like I'm just talking with a friend, like, would you like to tell me your story? And they'll tell me their story and relay maybe how they died or what led up to their death or the reason why they chose to stay around. This is all very important personal information to the ghost. And it's almost like a huge weight is lifted off if they're able to relay this information. And then I give them, some insight and some hopefulness that if you would like to cross over and be reunited with your loved ones, you have that option. And we talk through that, and sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't, which is totally just fine. So if a ghost sometimes approaches me in that like really big, grandiose, threatening or aggressive demeanor, I'll just tell them, hey, if you want to continue to talk with me, if you want someone who can see you and hear you, you have to change your appearance, please. And then if they don't, then I just end the session.
So do you think that you described they're viewing you as like that beacon, that somehow they take it as you're trying to push them away or push them out?
No, because that's never my intention. I actually, when I'm on investigations or when I'm approached by a ghost, the last thing I want to do is aggress them. I think that aggressing ghosts or spirits of any kind is really kind of rude. And like, can you imagine someone who approaches you on the street who would like to have a conversation with you, but the first thing they do is they come at you and they start calling you names and telling you to come at them and what's wrong, cat got your tongue. It's not going to set the tone for a great conversation or start, having open air for everyone to be comfortable to talk with. So I don't think that it's necessarily that they think I'm pushing them away. What I think is some of us who have developed our psychic abilities over the course of lifetimes and in this lifetime get to the point where we're kind of like, not searchlights, but like lighthouses. And so it's almost like we are throughout the world these points where ghosts can find us and find safe harbor, or they have the ability to. And I really do believe that that's like the whole purpose of having psychic gifts, is to be able to provide that safe harbor. Because we're not only providing safe harbor to the dead, well, and I say loosely dead, but maybe more likely the transitioned, but then we provide safe harbor too for the living and those that they've left behind. Some ghosts were so angry and so embittered and emotional when they were in human form that when they chose to stay here, those worst qualities of themselves began to grow. Not only did they stick around, but they began to embellish upon themselves. And so if you were cranky as a human, and you decided to stay behind, or just, you stayed behind, then you would be cranky times 10 as a ghost over time. And a lot of times, what I notice when ghosts come to me and they tell me their stories, they're usually ashamed, they're fearful of being judgment, of like a hell-like state on the other side, that the things that they've done in this lifetime are just unforgivable. So they've decided to stay here to prevent themselves from doing that or from experiencing that. And then some beyond that, in their experiences, they have secrets that they still want to keep. So there are actually, I've seen, I think we attract a certain type of energy, but the ghosts that come to me sometimes, they stuck around to make sure their secrets were never found out. Either they didn't want the living to know that about them, or they think that they can keep, that their residual energy can keep the living today from going to certain places in the property. And so, like, if I've got this light that's shining around, they feel threatened by that. It's almost like shining light on their darkness. And so it's more like, don't look at me, don't talk to me. I don't nose around in here. And I just actually had that very similar experience last weekend on an investigation in Wisconsin. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you think that um, that because they're looking at medium psychics as being able to delve into that treasure or that secret chest, that they also view you in an adversarial standpoint to some degree. Like, no, don't go in that room. No, don't go in that room.
I do. Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to figure out what would be a great analogy for the living. It's like walking into a room full of doctors if you have an illness that you don't want anybody you're with knowing what it is. Um,
Okay.
and it's, for every person, it's a little bit different, right? So every ghost is going to be a little bit different, their reasoning. But for whatever the reason, whatever that those truths are, whatever that scenario is, it can either bind them to this earth or it can set them free. And I think that's the reason why a lot of ghosts are very eager to tell their stories, because once they tell them, it's almost like it opens up that energy pattern to start the process about crossing over if they choose to. And so it's like their power to stay here where they want to be is kind of held in that secret that they keep. And they don't, maybe they don't realize that they have free will, whether the information comes out or not. They can choose to stay here. But some of the more malicious ghosts, they get really protective about their space and who they are and what they've done, and they just don't want anybody meddling in it. It's kind of like a get off my lawn type scenario, only
Yeah.
meaner.
Yeah. Do you think that's also true for victims of violence, where they feel that they have to stay in order for somebody to hear their story?
Wow, that's a really great question. I have never thought about it that way, but instantly I think so, yes. Like I just got goosebumps when you brought that up. So I think, there's a lot of human qualities in ghosts, and a lot of ghosts that were experiencing, how do I explain this? Like in human form, angry, upset, unhappy, ruthless adults were often very unfortunate children. And I think, the same is true for ghosts. If they get to the point where they're kind of malicious in the afterlife, in the earth plane, they've had this long lifetime pattern of repeating the abuse that they received or the misfortune that they received. And so I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to the psychology behind, victims who don't feel like that they can move on yet. And that's really why I think it's so super important for anyone in the paranormal field. Even if your main goal is simply to collect evidence, I totally respect that, but do it with compassion and empathy. That's why I'm a real big proponent for going into a location respectfully, because you're essentially entering their space without their permission, and trying to get like more of their story than that matches with the devices that collect the information, like the EVPs or the REM pods, the videos and the photography. Like, how amazing would it be if you had on video someone saying, this is what I'm hearing in my head, and then later you find out at the same moment you get the same EVP. Like, to me, that's an amazing crossover to be able to use both gifts and scientific research in your investigation.
Well, from that standpoint, do you think it's even necessary on an investigation to even ask a question?
Well, here's the thing. I do, because through questions, you open up that space and you start to develop a rapport with the spirits. So I've been in some locations where the spirits were very, well, in all of the locations that I've been, the spirits are usually very timid right up front. If they're not aggressive, if they're not malevolent, they're kind of timid. They want to see what you'll do. Because I do believe they're going to interact with investigators who are kind and inquisitive and playful in a different way than they would someone who's aggressing. So I think questions are important. And I think because everyone, does have that ability to have that intuition, whether you want to work or call it a full psychic gift or not, we all can agree that we have a certain degree of intuition, right? So as you're asking those questions, basically you're aligning your energy in this place where you can interact with with the intention to interact with these other spirits and ghosts. And so if you ask one question, then all of a sudden you get the intuition to ask another, and it's going to lead you to something that might give you evidence that you can actually present alongside your internal findings within you.
Now, back when you were young, did your parents know there were ghosts there in the house?
No, my parents were really big on you're just imagining it. And though I do get my gifts through my mother's side, I think, she personally is just a little like, she has gifts, but she doesn't, like, I see her interact with the gifts, but I think she's a little less open to acknowledging it. And so my experience with talking about psychic gifts and abilities is it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. I think that talking about such gifts kind of puts them in a place where they have to start talking about what's on the other side, or that there is another side. And that may not be a place that they're ready to really discuss right now. So they, if they saw something or felt something, or if their keys were misplaced, all of the little pieces of evidence that you might see in the house that we grew up in, they were just very quick to kind of shrug it off. And I think we also live in a society where it's just, you're really, you're more important if you just constantly stay busy, busy, busy. And so when you are too busy to really take a look and figure out, why are my keys always in this one place, and you're not really open to that, that was kind of my experience. And I think that's the reason why for the better half of 30 years, I was just very quick to ignore that, or keep any messages that I received to myself, thinking, okay, well, this is just my message and it doesn't need to be shared, when actually it does.
So go ahead, Barbara.
Well, we have a question in the chat room,
Okay.
and it's sort of along this lines, which is, has there ever been such a strong negative presence that you don't even want to go in there? Is that somebody says, "Oh no, you don't"? Do they have that much of a barrier, or can they throw up that much of a barrier where you just simply don't want to walk through the threshold?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. We actually saw direct evidence of that at our location this weekend. So this last weekend, we investigated the Old Baraboo Inn in Wisconsin. It's an amazing place. If anyone's in the area, I highly recommend stopping in. And it's a working bar. Stopping in and grabbing a drink, and introduce yourself to the proprietor, BC. Amazing person, amazing location. But in one area of the building that we were investigating, there's some very strong history with the building. And I don't know if I should share it in case anyone wants to investigate it, but well, I guess it was built in the 1840s, and it's a brothel, as well as it had direct ties to the mafia and Al Capone. And so there was all sorts of different degrees of activities happening in the building. And some of them were very, very unpleasant, very graphic, as you might imagine with organized crime. So there was one spirit there that literally tried to block our presence to that location in the building. Was very, very threatened by my presence. because of the similar to the reasons that we had spoke about earlier. And there were a couple of people on the team that really did feel like, wow, at one point in time, I cannot go through that door. I just can't go through that door. So the thing that I like to try and remember or remind all people is that nothing can hold power over us that we don't let, that we don't give permission to. And so it's one of those things that you might be walking and all of a sudden that energy hits you and it takes you back a little bit and you're like, oh, wow, I can't cross through there. But you just take a moment and realign yourself. And you take, basically you understand, oh, I'm not going to be stopped by this energy because I'm coming from a place of level-headed compassion, and I'm not doing any harm. I'm not going to give my power up and deny myself access to this area. And I think that's part of when a ghost can't keep someone out of their space, that you start seeing behavior that's kind of bully tactics. So like in the instance for this strong energy this past weekend, I just kept seeing this man. He wanted to hit me over and over and over again. He was kind of like the muscle for some of the nefarious activities from the mafia. And he was saying some very foul language, trying to intimidate me, trying to get me out of the space. And when he couldn't touch me, then he started moving through other team members. And so that's why during investigations, it's very important to realize nothing can harm me in this space unless I allow it to. I'm in full ownership of my energy and my protection here. I'm taking responsibility for the quality of that energy with my intention and the way that I choose to cleanse and protect myself in this space while I'm collecting the evidence.
See, I am not one who is medium or psychic. And I can go into these places. I don't never feel anything. I don't never hear anything. I don't see anything. But I catch all kinds of stuff on my recorder.
Oh, cool.
And I have Tina a lot of times is with me, and there's 3 or 4 others that are usually with me when I'm at places like that who are, and they'll be sitting there saying, there's this person over here, this one's over there, and I don't see anything. I don't hear anything.
Sure.
And I've never wanted to be that way. So I guess I can just keep it closed off, but I can still communicate with them, and I get a lot of responses on audio.
Yes.
So.
Yep. And that's why I love both components. I don't think there's one component over another. And I've heard some people who have really developed their psychic abilities and they prefer just to go into a location without any electronics whatsoever. I've heard other investigators who actually don't really like to have psychics or sensitives on their team. They only want to do electronic devices. And I respect the decision of both. I really love the idea of having a balanced marbled team, because I think the more documentation that you can have during an investigation, the more accreditation that you can have there. So, excuse me. It's totally one thing if someone says, I see that, or I hear that you say there's an energy over there, but I don't feel it and I want to. That's one thing. If someone who's completely fine with not feeling the energy and just working with the scientific evidence, then that's how you use and you work with your psychics, right? If the psychic's like, I feel energy in this area and this is what I'm picking up, I think the best way to utilize that is to take the equipment and in that area, see what you can collect to corroborate that, and see what comes up out of it. And with these investigations, it's like going to the zoo. Sometimes you're going to get a lot of activity, sometimes you're not, and it's just how the energy aligns that night. But my favorite investigations are where you've got both recorded evidence that a medium is picking something up at the same time that the electric equipment is also picking something up, because I really feel like that is a piece of evidence on both sides that really help perpetuate the fact that these two sides can work together in any investigation respectfully.
Yeah, we usually a lot of times when I'm on an investigation, I have at least one psychic or medium with me, and not all the time, but most of the time. And we were doing this one house, and it's supposed to have been a little girl spirit there, and I was trying to get her to come and talk with me, and we were just sitting. There's three of us sitting there, and all of a sudden the one says, "She's standing right in front of you." I said, "Oh, okay." So I'm getting my camera. I'm going to try and take a picture. And Mark says, "Honey, can Henry take your picture?" And the spirit on the recorder says, "I'm smiling."
Oh,
So
I love
that is confirming what she was saying, that she was right there in front of me.
Yeah,
And
I absolutely love that.
we get stuff like that, and that's the way I like to do it. So,
Yes. Yep. And I was surprised when I first got into like paranormal hunting, ghost hunting, and investigations. And there seems to be sometimes you'll run across a division in the industry where it's almost like team against team. Some teams are actually very opposed, almost in a negative light, very resistant to psychic mediums. And it's not fair just to say paranormal investigators can sometimes be like that. The public can be like that, right? I think there's a very negative history behind people who took advantage of these abilities and who have given out poor experiences. And I think once you try to trust someone and your trust has been broken in a most vulnerable way, then you're just like, I don't believe any of it. And I've got to respect that too, for sure. But I think it's the best when you can just stay open, at least to the possibility, because who's to say that the person who's feeling energy over there isn't actually feeling something specific, even if the equipment's not picking anything up in that moment, because they just happen to be a little bit more sensitive. And I think the more open you are, and you get the full spectrum of that, you're going to have more occurrences like that. I think there's a definite difference between debunking your evidence and disbelieving your evidence. And I think a lot of people shoot themselves in their foot when they're getting messages or they're feeling cold chills up alongside one side of their body and not mentioning it or not following that. Basically, that's like a little rabbit hole you could follow to see where it goes. And because maybe they're in an environment that doesn't support sharing information like that, then you're missing on a whole side or aspect of the investigation that could really be benefiting from that.
we got a question from the chat room. It is from, and it done went past me. Back it up here. It's from Kimmy J, and she wanted to know, do you feel some psychics or sensitives are drawn or connect to darker entities, and if so, why?
Oh, that's another excellent question. So, I do think like energy attracts like, and I don't think it's because that psychic or medium is negative in any way. But here's some of the things that influence society and our perception of psychic mediums, including psychic mediums. Hollywood's a big one that gives off some very, very blatant stereotypes on what a psychic medium is and does in a paranormal investigation. Insidious, the Conjuring series, The Exorcist, there's all sorts of history around the dramatization of ghosts. And then we start seeing things like curses and demons. that come into the Hollywood information as well. I have yet to meet anything that I would characterize as a demon. I think most energies that are that malicious are actually really advanced and negative human ghosts that have just twisted themselves into a very low, condensed negative energy. So, I personally think that every medium does good. There's always a reason why that they're coming into the energies that they're coming into. And the one thing that I always encourage everyone who gets messages is to sit with it long enough to really hone in your discernation. So practicing the art of discernment, because here's the other thing that ghosts like to do, kind of like what I was saying earlier, they like to play tricks. And they like to give us false information sometimes, and they like to lead us astray. And so you can't always take the information that you're getting from a ghost for face value. It's actually, with paranormal investigations, especially the more nefarious the spirit, the longer you have to stay with it and read the energy to say, okay, is this truthful energy? It doesn't feel like it. And you can start to kind of peel back the layers to get to the bottom of what's really going on there. I've had several ghosts appear themselves to me as children when they're not actually children. And I've had several children's spirits appear to me as these huge, lumbering, monster-like creatures when they're actually just little children. Those are examples of some of the things that you can come into contact with. And so mediums that are it might be that the medium is not necessarily attracting nothing but negative energy, but more so maybe that's just the more dramatic thing to talk about, because it's more fun to talk about the spirit that was, trying to give me kidney punches last weekend and how I defended myself against that ghost. And here I'm using spirit, but really it's ghost. This ghost that's giving me kidney punches and how I'm defending myself against it than it is to talk about the man who passed away in his recliner and is confused on what's going on. And I talked him through and allowed him to see his mom who helped him through the other side. Hollywood kind of helped perpetuate the dramatization and what's more fun and interesting to talk about when it comes to the other side in ghosts versus spirits. So just a couple of things that I would recommend. Anyone who gets messages, practice that art of discernment. What are you really feeling? Is it fear-based? Are you coming from a place of fear? Because that can also kind of bias your readings. Are you coming from a place of love, but the thing is trying to intimidate you? That's a better place to come from, because at least your slate is clean, and the information you're getting, you can start to filter through and understand what's truthful and what's not, versus someone who just kind of takes everything for face value.
To add on to that question, though, do you feel that there are some psychics or mediums that tend to draw those entities to them for whatever reason? Some people draw people that are less fortunate, or psychic vampires, etc., to them simply because of their energy type.
That's absolutely true. That's quite the possibility. I think if you are someone who's constantly attracting negative energy, and especially if you're feeling that it's unpleasant, now, like if you're able to handle it with confidence and it's not an issue and you're able to help clear or protect the group from it, whichever is the benefit there, then the reason why these spirits are coming to you is because that's what you're intended to work with in that moment. But if you're finding it that the negative energy that you're getting hit with time and time again is really unpleasant, then that is where, as energy workers and sensitives, we have to take a step back and check ourselves and say, okay, what's going on in my energy field? Where in my energy field am I attracting this stuff in? A big part of our work in psychic mediumship is that we also have to heal ourselves from our own past traumas. because every reader is different. They're going to have different experiences, and they're going to have different pieces of information, which is also why I love working with other mediums, because we'll all get our own pieces of information that create a bigger, more broader picture in an investigation. But when we're receiving this information, it's always through our own personal filter. And if that filter is still clouded with a bunch of painful memories or hurt that we haven't resolved within ourselves, then it may cloud. And that's where it comes back to that discernment, right? We have to work on ourselves to be able to get the most accurate information while we're out in the field or while we're giving a reading. So if I get to the point where personally, if I get to a point where I'm getting a string of negative energy that's really unpleasant to work with, I'm going to be working with myself to try and figure out, okay, is there something in my current energy field that's calling that in? And how, and start working on clearing that. I also think it's really important for mediums and psychics to be doing daily practices. Things like meditation, setting your intention, being aware throughout your day, the information that you're getting or how you're feeling. All of that helps to kind of maintain the healing work that you're doing so that you can get those crystal clear messages.
Jeff, you got anything?
Yeah, we forget. Yeah. We forget that there is.
Sorry. I was just going to reply to Henry that I'm just fascinated listening to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We forget sometimes that we do tend to filter. Well, we filter everyday experiences with other people, living people, through our own experiences, etc. And I was going to say that we try to anthropomorphize ghosts, but they were human at one point. So we're still practicing a certain degree of psychology when trying to interact with them and figure out what the issue is, right?
Absolutely. So there was, I was on an investigation in October. We had investigated the Rhodes Hotel in Atlanta, Indiana. An amazing place, and another area that I highly recommend for any investigator to check out. And while I was investigating, now here's the thing too, I also want to be very clear about, I'm not going into investigation spots to help these ghosts cross over. They have been here for over 100 years, sometimes hundreds of years. If they don't approach me for help, I'm not trying to force my help upon them. I am literally going into these spots and having a good time. There's a reason why they've stayed behind, and I respect that. I am really, really big on free will. But at the Rhodes, I was up in the attic, and there was actually a ghost who had approached me from outside of the building. So back to that lighthouse effect. As I was investigating there was someone that came into the space from another area who specifically asked me for help. And this particular ghost felt that his name was Jacob, and he felt that he had to stay behind because of another ghost named Anna. He said, Anna's not going to let me go. I'm feeling like I have to stay here. She wants me to be here. And Anna had a very over-controlling girlfriend type of energy. I don't necessarily get the vibe that they knew each other in life, but she found him in death, and she kind of played to his sympathies. Oh, I'm just a lonely girl, and I need someone to look out for me. We should stay here together. We can be happy together. Let's keep each other company type of thing. And so he was very reluctant. He wanted to move on. He didn't want to stay around, but he was very reluctant to do this to Anna. And he was kind of afraid what she might, how she might take it. And I literally had to, just like I would anyone who's in a relationship where they want to leave, but they don't feel comfortable, kind of go through the talking points of, Jacob, we all have free will. And if you're feeling the tug to leave this scenario and move on, there's a reason for that. And you have to believe that Anna will also have the option and the free will to move on from this as well if she chooses. I'll be here to help her and talk to her after this if she wants to. And after a lot of reluctancy, I was able to help him kind of come to terms with all of the possibilities and the love and support and the freedom that he could experience on the other side. And he did decide to just move on. Anna, unfortunately, did not decide to take that. In fact, she was very angry at me. She was very resentful at Jacob. She had some very angry crying type, not nice things to say. And as unfortunate as that is, I had to respect that and leave her be because she just wasn't interested in it. So I agree, Barbara, a lot of the times when I'm talking to ghosts, it's exactly how I would talk to the living in that same scenario. Except for a lot of times that scenario is that they may not know that they're dead. But, you talk to them like you would a friend. I'm really sorry to break this to you, but this is what's happened. This is how you died. These are your options now. And they're usually just, they're just usually very grateful for someone who cares, who's kind and patient, and takes the time to help them.
So when you're talking to these spirits, are you doing it through your mind, or are you actually speaking out to them? And then do you only hear them in your mind, or do you hear them actually speaking to you?
Yeah, no, I usually, especially if it's just me, it's all in my mind. And if I'm with others, I'll speak aloud so that they have the opportunity to hear at least my side of the conversation. When I hear the spirits, it's like a 40-60 split. 60% of the time is in my head. The conversation I'm having is two ways, though I hear them in different tones and different accents at times. And even if the ghost was native to another part of the world, because the other side kind of, it goes across the barrier of language. So I'll still hear them in English so that I can understand them. But it'll kind of pick up and reflect in that, if they had, if they're from China, they might have an accent from that part of the world. So, but the other 40%, sometimes I'm hearing snippets of the conversation out loud. And my sight is the same way. Sometimes, and most of the time it's in my head, which is why for a long time I thought it wasn't real. And then other times now that I, am going through this, and the more experiences that I have, my abilities are growing. And so I'm seeing more and more with my physical eye too. And that's what happens. There's so many different ways that we can get psychic information. And there's so many different ways that we can pick up information from passed on loved ones or ghosts. And what you'll notice is that as you start to acknowledge that and become aware of it, and you start to work with that to develop it, and you get stronger, your gifts will actually shift and shape themselves, and you'll start to have even more new experiences. And then all of a sudden you've learned a completely new psychic ability to go with that.
I got a question from the chat room, kind of. It's from Kat, and she wanted to know, why is it that living people believe they can advise those who have passed? We don't know how or if the other side works as well as they would.
So, and I love that question. I think that's a fantastic question. I think, again, it comes back to discernment. If a ghost ever asks me a question that I just don't know the answer to, I'm going to be honest with them. I'm sorry, I just don't know. But I have worked with my spirit guides. I have come to understand what it's, not necessarily what it's like to transition, even though I've done it in previous lifetimes, obviously. I think we all have. But I understand that everyone has the option to go to the other side, and I don't necessarily personally believe in hell. What my guides have shown me is that it's not there's no fear of judgment and brimstone. We all have experiences of varying degrees here on Earth, and for varying reasons. And then we go back on the other side to do a life review. And it's the closest thing that we have to hell is that during that life review, we might feel any pain that we caused, either intentionally or unintentionally to other people here on this side. But that's just to be able to gain perspective awareness. And then if you choose to help them while you're on the other side, you have that ability. So the way that I look at it is I'm not going out and seeking ghosts, and I'm not telling them about their business or telling them what to do. But what is happening is ghosts are actually finding me and asking me for help. And so this would be similar to walking along the street and someone who is clearly lost says, "I'm sorry, but do you know where I'm at?" I'm not just going to say, "I'm sorry, but I can't advise you on your life. I don't know where you're going. I don't know what you want to do. I can't help you," and walk away. In both scenarios, I'm going to take the time and ask them, "Oh, well, where are you coming from? Where would you like to go? What would you like to do? These are your options." And it's not that I'm necessarily telling them what to do, and I'm certainly not forcing them to do it. I'm just presenting them with the options of what they have available so that they can make the decision on their own. So what is really the kicker for me is that the information that I've received about what the other side is like, about some of the things that we might go through as we transition to the other side, has been corroborated by other psychic mediums. And so these are people that I didn't know at the time that we discussed this. It's someone that we'd never spoken before, and yet I'm sitting there hearing them explain to others what they have come to find out from their spirit guides or their meditations. And I'm like, yes, that's what I've come to find out too. So when you have like all of these different examples about unrelated people who are getting the same information, it's really hard to ignore that. And that's what it comes back to when I say debunking versus disbelieving. It's one thing that if you get a piece of information and everyone else you meet's like, "That's not what I experience," I might take that back and say, "Okay, let's refeel this out. What's going on? Why did I perceive it this way? What could it really be?" But if I'm getting a piece of information and 10 other people over the next 3 years that I meet have the same piece of information, then I'd have to go out of my way to disbelieve that. And I think that's unfair.
Barbara?
Well, I was just thinking that it makes sense when it comes to people who say that they're passing people over into the light. And I'm going, well, I mean, do you really know the directions?
Yeah.
And it's kind of difficult for me to say, well, do they really want to go? And, is it a two-way street? Can they come back? And I just,
Exactly. No,
issues.
I completely agree. I'm very clear. I am not doing anything for anyone other than staying there with them and hypothetically holding their energetic hand. So there was one person who had approached me. He had been so upset about something that was happening in the world at the time that he actually had caused himself a heart attack in his recliner, and they hadn't found him right away. And he was very confused when he reached me. He said, I'm not sure what has happened. And so we kind of talked about what I was picking up. And he said, "Oh, yes, I remember now." And I said, the way that I unfolded with him, I said, "Now that you are dead," I said, "you can either stay here on Earth if you choose to. And here's what you might experience on Earth." I said, "Or Here you have the option of crossing over if you'd like to, and here's what you might experience crossing over. And usually, about that time, if they are interested in the idea of crossing over, it's actually their energy that opens up any portals. It's not me. It's their energy. It's their pace. If they have any questions, I ask them to the best of my ability. And what often happens at that time, also as their portal has opened up, their loved ones that arrive to help them cross over show up and just wait to see what they choose to do. And so, especially anyone who is scared or didn't realize that they were dead at the time, by the time that they see their loved ones, they're so relieved to find someone that they know. They choose to go with their loved ones. Every once in a while, they've decided not to, and I totally respect that. The moment that they make that decision, their portal closes, and I let them know, then there's nothing more I can do here for you. And I send them with love and peace, and I let them know that if they ever choose to change their mind or would like to talk again, they're more than welcome to find me. And that's literally been my experiences when I help others. And I don't even like to call it helping them cross over. I just help them make an educated decision, or I help them make a supported decision. It's literally just like I would be helping a friend. They're like, I don't know whether I should, stay in Ohio or move to Montana. I'm like, well, here are your options. And, let's look at what you might be gaining in either area, what you might be losing in any area. The other misconception too, I think, that really holds a lot of spirits back, that they want to stay here on Earth, is that they don't feel like they can come back. And that's not true either. So the biggest difference between spirits and ghosts is that once a ghost, or once a person who's passed away decides to transition over to the other side, it's like all of the dense emotional negativity that we have in this realm of Earth is washed away. And they no longer have that earthly, it's almost like a coat. It's almost like a very heavy coat. It's almost like a burden, right? And they come back to, as they acclimate to the other side again, they come back to their more natural soul state, which is really just pure, divine, unapologetic, unconditional love. While they're there, our loved ones can sometimes decide to stick around and act as guides for us. I have some spirit guides that I never knew in this life, and I have some spirit guides that are my grandparents. Because they decided that there was some things on the other side that they could help us with. And so I hear that a lot. Like, I've got a friend whose father passed away, and the moment he got to the other side and he saw the bigger picture, he decided to stick around, and he pops in and out with my friend a lot. And I've also heard some people, and the moment I heard this, it completely resonated with me. On the topic of death and the fear and the sadness of dying. A lot of people believe that, there's more help that I can give you on the other side than I ever can here. And I do believe that there's a certain amount of wisdom to that. But it's not like you can never come back. And I've even seen spirits, if they've just been in love with a property their entire lifetime, and they decide to go to the other side and transition, they will actually come back as a spirit to that property and hang out. But it's a completely different energy quality than you would get from a ghost who's never gone over to the other side and kind of release that heavy coat of the negativity.
So it's kind of like they get a new coat, or it's sort of like developing a sage or a magus standpoint when you finally reach a period of enlightenment, kind of.
Yeah, so
the light bulb turns on.
Yeah, I think we come and we have multiple lifetimes for the experience of it. And I mean, if you think about it, the whole reason why we're driven to do certain things in this lifetime is to be able to have the experience for it. I wanted to be a mom so that I could experience what it was like to be pregnant and to give birth and to, emotionally be there for someone as they're developing and going through all these changes. I wanted to be in corporate because I wanted to have the experience of knowing what it was like to have a 9 to 5 or sometimes a 9 to 8 job that was highly demanding and full of pressure. I wanted to go to Wisconsin last weekend because I wanted to have the experience of what it would be like to travel 8 hours in the car and get to see this new location in this new state that I'd never been to before and have the experiences of investigating with my friends. So just like we've been talking on and off throughout the night, a lot of what we want to do or what drives us as humans alive here in this and on Earth is reflected in the bigger picture on the other side on our soul level. I do think that the macro and microcosm, as above, so below, there's a strong pull to that and a strong sensation to that. So we're coming here and we're hoping to meet certain guide stones or have certain experiences here to be able to develop that part of ourselves spiritually and to evolve ourselves and to enlighten ourselves. And then at the end of this lifetime, when it's our time to go, we take all of that experience and we transition it over to the other side. And then we, take time to acclimate, we do our life review, we kind of reconnect with our soul groups over there, our family members and our loved ones, and we kind of plan it again. Okay, this was my experience in this lifetime. I think this lifetime I want to experience this. So it's almost like when we come here on Earth, we do have these heavy coats that are our lives at this time. And I imagine those coats have thousands of pockets. And each pocket has a little trinket from all the experiences that we've ever received. And as rich and fulfilling as it is to collect all of the little trinkets, over time it just gets heavy and you get kind of tired. And so to me, what it's like when you leave this earth and you transition over to the other side is like you get to take that coat off, but keep the knowledge of the experiences that you've been carrying around.
All right, I think it's time for us to take a break, and we'll be back in about 5-6 minutes. So, Devin, you just hang in there and don't say too much.
Very good.
Or mute your microphone.
Yeah, either one. And with that, we're going to let Jeff take us out.
Yep. Yeah, well, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with hosts Henry Foister, Ceiling Cat Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with our guest psychic medium, Devin Evans. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.